On this episode of From One Player to Another, we have legendary drummer for Black Sabbath, Dio, Last in Line, and countless others, Vinny Appice. This is Greg Marra with Go DPS Music Live, and this is From One Player to Another. And I've been a fan since Sacred Heart. But you know the thing that's funny about that is I actually heard you play many years before that, but didn't realize it because you weren't in the videos. So can we start with that? What was the story behind like Rainbow in the Dark? And you know, Vivian and Jimmy were in those videos, but for whatever reason, we didn't see you for, you know, a couple videos song later, you know?
Well, at the time, the album was done, and Ronnie told me he was going to go to England to do press. So at that time, you know, I was a young kid, and I wasn't going to England for a while. It didn't, you know, appeal to me that much because I'm used to being at home in the States. And so I thought, well, if I don't have to go, you know, it's cool. I'd rather stay home. So I stayed home, but then I don't know if they knew they were doing a video for Rainbow in the Dark. I don't know if it was planned or when he got there, they decided to do a video. But nobody told me they were doing a video. Otherwise, of course, I would have went, you know. And by the way, these days now, I love England. It's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Visit and stuff. Love it. So I didn't go. And next thing I know, they're doing a video. So Jimmy and Vivian obviously were there. I think they were both in London. And somebody called them on the phone and told them that, hey, Ronnie's doing a video down the street, man. You guys should go check it out. So they weren't invited either. And then they got to where Ronnie was shooting the video. And since they were there, they got in the video.
Yeah. Had
it not been for somebody that knew about the video being shot, they wouldn't have been in the video either. I don't know what the plan is, why he didn't put the whole band in. I think it was ridiculous, you know.
Some of those early videos were they're really out there and kind of comedic now, but if you look at the songs, you listen to those songs like Holy Diver, I mean, that song's been covered by, I think, Killswitch Engage, and every time I listen to it, it's powerful and it's freaking awesome. Every Dio song from those early era is amazing, still to this day.
The song by Liliac, that new band, young, they did Holy Diver, and she, Melody, the singer, just killed it. You know, it sounds like Ronnie. It's like amazing. No sign of the morning coming, you will left on your own, like the rainbow in the dark. We listened to Sacred Heart nonstop, maybe for 2 years straight, I think it was. And I have it on vinyl still to this day, and it still sounds warm and awesome. I guess the thing that's interesting, I have a very specific question that I don't think I've ever heard you talk about. There's a song, I think it's Hungry for Heaven, and it has a very similar chord structure to Baba O'Reilly by The Who. Is there any merit to that's that similar? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I guess it's the same chords.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a lot of 3-chord famous songs that made it big. I think that was, it was written for a movie, and it was kind of Ronnie's idea to try to be commercial with a song. And that's how Hungry for Heaven came about. But Rainbow in the Dark's only like 4 chords, you know? Yeah, that's true. That was commercial, but it was heavy. Hungry for Heaven is a bit more lightweight, and it's not as good as the other song.
Yeah. Well, look, I just wanted to fan out on that for a minute because that was my high school. I mean, those songs were the soundtrack to, I think, a lot of kids that are, you know, guys that are my age now. I mean, we could still listen to it and you still get kind of pumped up. You want to drive your car fast to those songs.
Yeah. But you want to drive your car faster when you hear Rainbow in the Dark.
That's true. And in that, so the thing about your drumming that I always noticed was
you always had these monster kits on stage. And I think for one tour, you had the 3-rack, the huge toms on your left-hand side, and it was on a swing that went all the way down and up. How did that, that was mainly for stage, or how did you come up with that idea?
Well, actually, before that was with Heaven and Hell in 2007 and 2009. But before that, I had those aerial toms, we call them, which were on above my shoulders. So you hit them like that, And I used to do a drum solo, then at the end, stand up and hit the aerial tom and then push it down, and my roadie would catch it.
Vinny Appice!
But then when we did Heaven and Hell, my new tech, Andre, we put the stands, this is real high tech, $10 bungee cords. The real heavy rubber, bungee cords, and he wrapped them. And we was able to push it, and it would just rock back and forth, like that until it stopped. I had to get used to it so it didn't hit me.
Yeah.
It's the most effective effect on stage live I've ever done. And we've had so much production on stage with Dio. We had risers that went up to the truss.
Yeah. Yep.
Big arena. I was up there. It had big wheels on it, had laser drumsticks, pyro, everything. This thing with the drums going down, coming back up. Even the girls in the audience noticed. So I spoke to some girls. I saw your drum fall. I was going to run up and go catch it for you. So I was like, oh my God, it's like a $10 effect, and it works so well. It was cool.
For those massive kits that you had back in the 80s, were there any, did you have any injuries from, sort of using those drums so high up?
Not in the 80s, but in 2009 with Heaven and Hell, the kit I had was a 21-piece kit. So I had, I don't even know, 4 aerials, and I had 2 more behind me, and a gong bass drum, 2 of those behind me. So I was playing like this way. And man, I started to feel burn in my shoulders. And by the end of the tour, my right arm, I couldn't even lift it. I couldn't even put the seatbelt in the car on. I had to drag it with the left hand, push it in. I couldn't raise my hand and my arm. Went to the doctor, and he said, well, you tore it up, the shoulder. So they had to go in and put an anchor and then pull the tendon back on. The tendon popped. I had to do that, then do the rehabilitation and all that. And now it's as good as new. And then my brother Carmine, about a year later, he was on tour with Michael Schenker, and on stage, he felt his pop. He couldn't play. He was like this.
You were in Black Sabbath on one of my most favorite, the Dio era Sabbath is my favorite. So when you talk about Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, those are my 2 favorite Black Sabbath Dio era. What was that like? So I guess the story is out there that whenever Bill Ward did not come back from the Heaven and Hell tour, which you replaced him on, that you stayed on for the Mob Rules record. What was the story behind that transition from Black Sabbath using Bill Ward and him not coming back, and now you're the guy in the band?
Well, what's funny in that year, I think it was 1980, right before the Sabbath thing happened, I got a phone call from Sharon Osbourne telling me, talking to me about Ozzy putting a new band together. And do I want to go to England to play with Ozzy and see how it goes? And I asked my brother Carmine, I said, hey, I just got this offer to play with Ozzy Osbourne. Isn't he nuts? Is he crazy or what? I was young. Yeah, I was 20 years old. I think my brother said, yeah, he's pretty crazy, because he knew him. He toured with him with different bands and stuff. So it kind of got like, I turned it down, basically. So, and then about 2 months later, I got a call from Sabbath. And they're in L.A., and they said, we're in town. We heard of you, and we heard your stuff. you want to come down and meet Tony Iommi one night? So I said, okay, sure. Went down to the hotel, met Tony. Tony and I hit it off really well. We had a lot of fun, and he had one of the albums I did called Axis, an album, a three-piece band I had. And the drum sound was really cool on it. It was Andy Johns that did the drums. And he liked it, and he invited me down to this rehearsal next day. And I met Ronnie and Geezer and Jeff Nichols, the keyboard player. So basically, we played Neon Nights was the first song.
Nice.
I didn't really know any of these songs. I was a Sabbath fan, but I didn't know the songs. I was more of a Zeppelin fan.
Yeah.
So they said, oh, he's good. All right, you're in. So then we rehearsed a little bit. And then they went over to down the street to the pub. And I stayed back and started learning these songs. And every day, the first couple of days, they went to the pub after 2 hours, So then we only had 4 days to rehearse. Then everybody got nervous, and we had to rehearse really hard and a lot more. And the first gig was in Hawaii at 30,000 people.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't really know these songs, man. It's a lot to learn. Those old songs, the old Sabbath songs, change tempos, and there's certain things that happen in those songs that make it a little bit more complicated, even the songs from Heaven and Hell. So basically, I joined on the middle of the Heaven and Hell tour. And then they said, well, you're in the band until Bill comes back. I said, okay, that's great, Black Sabbath, amazing. Playing arenas now and all this stuff. And then during that tour, the rest of the Heaven and Hell tour, Warner Brothers asked us to do a soundtrack for a movie called, what was it, Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
Animated movie. So we had a couple of days off in England, and we went into John Lennon's house, and he already was murdered, but Ringo owned it.
Yeah.
We hung out there for a couple of days. That was amazing. And we wrote and recorded The Mob Rules.
Wow.
And that came out so good. We all loved it, and the record company flipped out. They loved it. Everybody was positive about it. So that kind of secured my footing in the band, Bill's not coming back. I recorded a popular song with him, so Bill never came back. So I just continued with the band,
Were there a lot of open jams like that, where you guys would be recording at the same time, and then you turn it into a song after the fact? How did a lot of that interaction happen?
Well, most of the songs for Mob Rules were written together at a rehearsal studio in California, in the Valley, Los Angeles. I was in charge of the tapes. I would have a cassette tape at the time. That's all we had. And I would record jams. I'd record, sometimes Tony would be playing by himself. I'd record it. And I had all the riffs. And then we'd listen to it and go, hey, that's really cool. So there's a number of times where, we had a riff or something, and then at the end, we kept playing, and then we stopped. But that part was really cool. One of the examples of that is a different album. It's The Humanizer, a song called Time Machine. And we had a couple of parts, and we were playing it. I recorded it. This is in England. And then all of a sudden, Tony stopped playing, and Geezer and I kept playing.
Yeah.
And then we stopped and went, okay, I don't know, And then that night, I listened to it. I thought that was so cool to go into a guitar solo. So I mentioned it, and that's how we got into the guitar solo. Just Tony stopped. It was just bass and drums, and then Tony came in with his leads. So we were open for, crazy ideas and stuff, and that's the way some of that came about, just from jamming. Nothing was written before we go in.
Yeah, still epic to listen back these days. And I just listened to Mob Rules again on vinyl, and it just sounds as warm and punchy as it ever did. I want to go back to Hearing Aid, 86. So for a guy that's my age, I'm in my late 40s, whenever Hearing Aid came out, it was just the coolest thing, because when they had the director's cut, they put out the 20-minute guitar solo. I mean, the song was only four minutes or whatever it is, but the original Dio band was the backing band that recorded Hearing Aid. What are your memories of that session, and was that like a multiple day thing, or how did that come about?
Well, Viv and Jimmy came up with the song, and then Ronnie and Wendy might have, and Jimmy, and I think they all came up. I don't actually, you know what? To be safe, I don't know who came up with the idea, but it was an idea to do a song like "We Are the World" with everybody. "We Are the World" and Michael Jackson and Celine Dion, whoever, all those, soft people. And then we would do a heavy metal version of that. So that was the idea. And backing track was myself, Jimmy, and Viv. And then Frankie Vanelli, God bless him, he's fighting a hard battle with cancer, and we wish him the best.
Absolutely.
Great drummer. Him and I played at the same time, which is unusual.
Yeah.
With Jimmy and Viv. So we just counted it off, and we both played. We didn't overdub each other. And that was the backing track. And then Ronnie and Wendy organized all the people coming in, singers, guitar players. It was like one big party. Especially when the guys from Spinal Tap came in.
Yeah.
Band.
Yeah.
They were the biggest guys there, Spinal Tap.
Yeah. And it's still online. You can go on YouTube and type in Hearing Aid, and you'll see the entire director's cut. It's very, very cool. Looks like we're about halfway, so I really want to get into when you first started playing. I want to start first with your move to Sawtooth Drums. I see your kit behind you, and I see the logo, and obviously we know that you're a Sawtooth drummer. You've played various kits throughout the years. What is about Sawtooth that drew you to them? And I know you took them on tour and road tested them, and so what is it about Sawtooth?
Well, they're really great sounding drums, and this is actually the Commands kit, one of the first kits I got from Joe, who's the owner of Sawtooth, and they're not expensive drums, and I was amazed at the sound. This poplar wood, and I started playing them, and I was blown away. The only thing I did to the snare drum was we beefed it up a little bit more because we were playing a lot of shows, and they're just great sounding drums. And eventually, we're doing a kit out of mahogany, a little higher end kit. And the main thing with these drums is Joe, the owner, cares so much about every detail. He gets feedback from me, like, Joe, this is a little funny here. Maybe we could bring it to your attention. And he's on it. He's hands on with these drums. Tests them. He's a drummer. He's a good drummer too, great drummer, and he's on this stuff. So I've taken him on tour, and people remark, "Wow, the drums sound amazing."
Yeah,
tall, and big, and fat. And now I use them here. This is my recording setup at my house, and they sound killer.
Yeah,
it's amazing, and they're not expensive. They're not a high end drum.
Yeah,
you can upgrade the snare drums and things like that, but this is the first kit, and it kicks.
I've seen you a bunch. I saw you at the Ventura Theater last, and it's just massive. I mean, it's just a massive sounding kit. So what is your kit set up right now? It's a 6-piece, 2 floor toms, 2 racks, snare, and what size is your kick?
The kick is this one. This one might be 16 by 24. Joe's putting together a new kit for me out of mahogany, and I'm going with 14 by 24. 14 was the original size of all the bass drums in the 60s and 70s. And it's just what I like about the 14 is it's fast, because you don't have the sound's not traveling through the whole 16 or 18 inches, and you see long bass drums. So it's got a lot of punch, and the mahogany wood's incredible. The snare drum back here is the mahogany snare drum, and I just put it up, and it sounds great on the recording. Actually, the other day, I looked underneath, and 2 of the screws that came loose because they didn't bother to really keep them maintained. Listen to that. And that's what 2 screws that were loose. So I tightened them up, and it just whacked it. Great sound.
Well, I really want to get into when you started playing, and we had a bunch of questions that we kind of came up with on that end. But before we do, I had a question from someone that asked about a single-headed tom. Your toms used to be one-sided with the open-ended on the bottom. What's your philosophy on that? And what do you prefer for drum heads? Maybe you can go into that a little bit.
Well, the drums, the single-headed toms were back in the day when I started in the 70s, like as a kid. My brother was a big influence in me, and he had concert toms. Those are called concert toms. So I just stuck with that. I'm like, well, I want concert toms. So I played those for a long time and got used to them. There's a lot of punch in them, a lot of punch. And we used to just mic them from inside the drum, put mics underneath right inside. And it gave you a lot of punch, but not a lot of ring or tone. So emphasis on punch. I think that's what we used on Holy Diver too, the album Holy Diver. Those drums are recorded that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I used to have a set of 4 toms with 2 heads on them. And those had a nice tone to them. And I just didn't like them live at the time. I wasn't used to them. And then eventually it led me to start using double-headed drums. And now I love them. They're easier to play than single head. Single head, you hit it and it goes boom, bing, and it's over. The double head, you got some ring on it and some tone, The notes last longer.
You have a lick that you do that I had a year where I studied with Glenn Sobel, who's with Alice Cooper, and I wanted to learn how to write drum music out, less about how the technique of playing drums. So one of the licks that he taught me was the bucket of fish, that John Bonham thing. You have a different way that you count that, and then you have multiple ways that you group that. Can you talk about that lick in particular, and I guess maybe tie it in with your right foot technique?
Right. Well, bucket of fish, I don't call it that. There's 2 ways to do it. One of them is with one bass drum. Ba, ba, boom, boom. Bucket of fish. Ba-da-da-doom. And it's got to be snare first. Snare, small tom, floor tom, foot. Ba-da-da-doom, ba-da-da-doom. So you could put that fill, like if you're playing 1, 2, da-da-da-doom, ba-boom, boom. Or you could put it on the ends, 1, 2, 3, da-da-da-doom, boom.
Yeah.
It's where you place these things,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of I place them in funny places.
Yeah.
In odd places, And the way I do it live is with 2 bass drums. And that's left, right, foot, foot.
Yes.
Doom, doom, boom. Left, right, foot, foot. Doom. It's more work.
Right.
But I've always had single bass drum, and I've always worked on my foot, so I have a pretty strong foot.
Yeah.
And I also use that at the end. If you see me play live when we end the song, not every song, but down,
Mm-hmm.
down, band, down.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like F you at the end of the song. And then you can go the other way. When you're doing it one bass drum, you go right, left, floor, bop, bop, boom.
Yeah.
Bop, bop, boom. Then you can go boom, boom, bop, boom, boom, bop, bop. Go the other way.
Yeah, that's harder.
Yeah. Bonzo did it in his Moby Dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
The originator of that, I think, is Max Roach.
Yes, absolutely.
The old jazz albums, and that's where Bonham probably heard it,
Well, speaking of Bonham, in Good Times, Bad Times, it was always that, I think it was a hi-hat and 2 right foots, and that's that triplet sound. Yeah, but you pull that off all the time, and you're using sort of like the ball of your foot. I don't usually, like when I look at your right foot technique, it's usually like 2 individual single strokes on your right foot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not a bounce or anything. My foot's like this, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And like I tell everybody, if I'm showing that at the clinic or something, just sit there and do it with the right hand.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get the notes. The trick is having it steady.
Yeah.
And dynamically even.
Mm-hmm.
Then use your left hand without fluttering, messing
right.
up. It's like a machine.
And
that's where you get your foot strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a triplet. And then I do one that's a 16th, which is right, left, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Even faster.
Yeah. They're so hard to do. I'll tell you, even when I play, it's like I've got to have the right tension on the bass pedal, the kick pedal, in order to do that. And also, it seems like the head of the kick drum has to have the right tension too, because I have to have, with the rebound. Yeah, the bounce is, it'll throw you off.
I could stand up on the wood floor over there and I could play it too.
Yeah.
See, that's the trick. And I do that at a clinic. I said, look, this is the way you get your foot strong. You just sit there and do it. Use your ankle. You're not using your legs so much. It's like using your wrists for the volume, not your arms all the time.
Can you talk about growing up and when you first started taking lessons? I think the instructor's name was Dick Bennett. A little bit about him and, just sort of those early days of growing up, practice pad playing, that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, when I grew up, Carmine's 11 years older than me, and he had bands already in Brooklyn, and they'd come to the house to rehearse. We were in Brooklyn. We had a porch in the front of the house, and the band would come, set up, and I'd watch them sit on the floor. I was like 8 years old, 7 years old. And it was the coolest thing for a 7-year-old to have this entertainment, like I got a whole band in front of me and I had the amps and the wires and keyboards and like all this gear. And it was really cool. So that inspired me. And he left the drums there. I think it was a red sparkle Gretsch kit. And I think it's the one he actually used on the Ed Sullivan show when the Vanilla Fudge hit the Ed Sullivan TV show, which was a big show at the time. And then eventually he got other drums, and he left those drums with me, and I used them for quite a while. And then Carmine went on to having maple drums from Ludwig, maple finish, and really beautiful. I thought if I could rip the red sparkle off the drum, I'd have a maple drum. I ripped the red sparkle off, and it took chunks of wood out. It ruined the whole kit.
Yeah,
kill me for doing that. Actually, that kit would have been a classic kit.
Yeah.
So then, he went on to become successful, and I just played and watched, and sometimes he'd show me some things when he had time, and I'd pick it up right away. And then Carmine told my parents, you should send him for lessons. He's good.
Yeah.
So same guy he went to, Dick Bennett. He was in Brooklyn. I used to take 2 buses to get to his house.
Yeah.
And I was too young to take the bus, so my mother would take me. Yeah, I was 10 years old. She wanted me traveling 2 buses by myself. So my mother, God bless her, and my parents were very supportive of our careers. Every week took me to drum lessons till I got older. And she'd wait outside, and we'd go into Dick Bennett's little studio. We had an old set of Leedy drums, a little hi-fi, and then we had a music stand and 2 drum pads. And most of the lessons for 3 years was done on the drum pad.
Yeah.
Reading books like Stick Control, Syncopation, Jim Chapman's Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer. That's a jazz. That's the only time we went on to the drum set. All-American Drummer, Rudiments. But most of the time was spent on the pad, not on the drums.
Yeah.
So I would do that. Then I would go home and practice the songs or listen for licks and try to figure out what they were. And learn, not just play the music. Like a lot of people today go, well, I played these songs. Yeah, but it doesn't really do that much for you.
Yeah.
You play the songs, it's good, but you're not going to come away from that and go, I just learned a new lick today. Like if you heard Bonham go, do-do-do-doom, do-do-do-doom,
yeah,
boom, and you went, what is that? And you figured it out, and you worked it and practiced it. Then all of a sudden you've accomplished something new, and you're drumming.
Yeah.
So got to practice that way. I make a point of telling everybody that's, music's good, play it with CD, but learn how to practice too.
Right. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to all of our socials on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and everywhere else on the web. This is Greg Marra with Go DPS Music Live. Thanks for watching. See you on the next episode.